Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are at day 5,363 of the COVID era. So give me 1 second to make sure we're rolling here, and then we'll get started. We are joined today by a longtime friend of the Central Florida Freethought community, David Tamayo. He is a founder of the Hispanic American Freethinkers. So more on him shortly, and I'll introduce him as well. But a few reminders before we get started. We're live on Zoom and streaming to YouTube. If you're seeing us on YouTube and you're in Central Florida, be sure to join us on Meetup if you haven't already. That way you can keep up with all our activities, since not all of them are on Facebook or YouTube. So in just 8 weeks, we'll be back in person for some of our events. Some of them have already started in person social events, but we'll be at the same time as always and the same location as before, the University Club in Winter Park at 3 p.m. And that's where we'll be for our first in-person educational event in 580 days. I was exaggerating before in case you didn't know, but who's counting? 580 days it will be since our last event. After that, we'll be hosting those regularly, except for holidays and other conflicts on the calendar. So mark your calendar tentatively for the third Sunday of each month. And hopefully things continue, start improving. I should say continue, because there seem to be getting worse regarding the pandemic, but hopefully they'll start improving and we will be able to do that more regularly. We hope we don't have to reverse things, but we certainly will if that's the best guidance. Our first event back is going to be fantastic. We have Dr. Dan Bachelor, who you will remember from 2 prior speaking events with us and from the Freethought Florida Conference, Free Flow. He now works at NASA. So that, along with his English accent, will make him sound super smart. That is on September 19th at 3 p.m. We'll be in the large room at the University Club, and we'll be following the latest CDC guidelines as well as those from local officials. So we may be wearing masks. We may be more distant than before, but we'll see how that goes. We're really hoping that comes off as a great event, but we want to be safe most of all. So be sure to sign up for all of our events at meetup.com/CFL Freethought. And once you join, be sure to RSVP for upcoming events, put them on your calendar, and join us in person. We have one more Zoom event next month with Rebecca Hensler from Grief Beyond Belief. I'll talk about that just a little bit after we get done. If you prefer to hear about our events via monthly email, in addition to Meetup or instead of Meetup, go to tinyurl.com/CFFC newsletter. Give us your email address and any other contact information you like, and we promise to keep you in the loop. Today's event is part of a recurring educational series that we started all the way back in 2015. You can find all of our past presentations, not all the way back that far because we didn't have help with video all the way back then, but you can find all of those from the last year where we've had people around the country join us, and for the previous several years where we had people coming from around the state and around town to talk to us about issues that are important to us. You can find that on YouTube at youtube.com/CFL Freethought. And we'll drop these links into the chat, and we'll also be putting them onto the YouTube stream for those viewing there as well. Looks like we've got a few of you on YouTube already, so thanks for that. If you're with us in the Zoom meeting today, you can find the chat option available at the bottom of your computer screen. If you're on a mobile device, just tap the screen and that should appear as an option. And chat is where you want to ask questions today, so put those in there and we'll get to as many as we can. Also, your microphone will be kept on mute until the end so you don't accidentally interrupt the presentation. If you speak or bump your microphone during the talk, it'll turn its attention to you, and we want to keep that on our speaker today, at least until we get done. If you want to keep your camera on, that's absolutely fine, but let's please avoid visual distractions. So let's talk about our speaker today. David Tamayo is founder and president of Hispanic American Freethinkers, also known as HAFree. So you'll hear him refer to as HAFree, so keep that in mind as we go through. It's the only national Latino nonprofit that supports the growing community of libre pensadores, or freethinkers, in the United States and beyond. He's the organizer of the HAFree High School Outreach Mentor Program to Latino and immigrant students that teaches critical thinking skills and career planning. He was a founding board member of Camp Quest, a secular summer camp for kids. And in 2016, he was the president of the Reason Rally. So that was a big year. That was a lot of work, I bet. So that's what he does to not pay the bills. He does have a job to help pay the bills, like many of us. His day job is as chief information officer for an aerospace engineering firm in our nation's capital. And those skills help him as he also assists high school cybersecurity teams as they compete in the Air Force's National Cyber Patriot competition. He's also, we're not done yet, vice president and founder of the Hispanic Business and Technology Council, a nonprofit that educates young Hispanics to be IT leaders. His topic of choice today covers a few areas of interest, including work done by the late Dr. Hector Avalos, who shared his thoughts on his own death as he was nearing it, along with similar and related issues, but he's promised the conversation will be a positive one, and we look forward to your questions on the subject. So put those in the chat. We'll remind you there. Put those on YouTube in the comment stream. And David, welcome back to the CFFC.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll answer what might be in people's questions. Why do we need another Hispanic, or another group, I should say, another group of freethinkers, and this being, of Hispanic focus? Aren't we all dealing with the same things? And absolutely, it's a fair question, and it is true. We are all having the same issues when it comes to the religion being pushed on us, etc. What we do is we try to use that as a focus on the cultural part, because culture and religion are very much integrated. They're both man-made, and therefore, they are parts of the culture that we want to see changed, and parts of religion that we want to see changed, and some things we want to see totally eliminated, obviously. So that's a reason for our existence. But as I said, we have the same issues that we all have in dealing with, especially with the topic that we'll be dealing with today. Let me see if I can share my screen over here. So
yeah, go ahead.
We can go from there.
I'm seeing your screen, and
we're good there, right?
Yeah, now I'm seeing the slides. It's all you, David. Go ahead.
So, I didn't know what title to put to this. I figured, all right, I'll put chess pieces because I like playing chess. And, first year of college, I paid that year by playing chess in the street, hustling people. But the agenda for today, it's I don't know if it'll cut everybody's screen, but try to keep it on the light side. We're going to talk about the ultimate checkmate, which is death. We'll talk a little bit about Dr. Hector Avalos, a good friend of mine who just recently passed away, outspoken atheist, etc. And then we'll talk a little bit about death with dignity, and then we'll just have some questions and answers. So I tried to find some cute GIFs and things like that. And I think if we treat this with humor a little bit, it will help us in dealing with some of the heavy topics. We are all naturally afraid of death. We push away when something is hurting us without thinking. We are wired that way. So it's not being worried about death and etc. It's something that as humans is what keeps us alive, and so it's a topic that a lot of people sometimes don't want to talk about. So to start, I thought, I put the question in the heading of the presentation, and of course, what happens after we die is, as I forget his name, Casey. Put it is CK. Puts it, lots of things happen after you die. Just none of them include you. And if you ask someone else, they'll say, well, what happens is you move on and we take care of this. And now, in the hospital, we clean the bed and next, and go on. It's part of life, and we need to look at it in that respect. We are lucky to be able to die, because if we don't die, that means we were never born, and we never had the opportunity to live this great ride. And so I see life as a big ride in an amusement park, where you enjoy yourself, knowing that it's going to end, and perhaps because it's going to end, it's that it makes it more enjoyable. And so I think we should look at life in that respect. So what authority do I have for this? Absolutely none. I'm just like everybody else. I got a platform because I'm the head of Hispanic American Freethinkers, and I thought that this would be a good topic to talk about because of Hector's death recently. And so I had a chance to talk to Hector in person a few times, and I was there when he found out that he had terminal cancer and that he was going to die. And so I was having dinner with him when he found that out. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But So the definition, a lot of people say, well, I was dead for 3 seconds, or I was dead for this and I came back from the dead. And we hear this a lot, especially from religious folks. But the definition is the irreversible cessation of circulation, irreversible cessation of respiration, and irreversible cessation of the brain function. That's what death is. We know that there's no mind without a brain, and so there's no evidence for souls. There's no evidence for a lot of things that religion uses to push onto people. But again, we want to be able to talk about these things in a more as natural way as possible. So I don't know if you can see my cartoon in there. It basically says, don't wait until the death to tell people. You might not be able to, you might be too weak to give them the middle finger. So Hector was in a good mood and in making jokes all the way to the end. And I don't know how many people have gone through the experience of having someone close to them pass away. I'm very fortunate. I still have my parents, all my siblings, and last family member that died that was close to me I was 6 years old when my grandparents died. But I had a neighbor, a friend of mine, that died a couple of years ago, and she ALS, and she could barely talk, she could barely move, and she was still making jokes towards the end, and she was an atheist. And so it's I think it's good. It's interesting to see that religious people typically try to cling on to life far more than atheists do. So we'll try to keep this conversation not too grim, although with Hector, I don't think I put too many jokes in there. A side note on this, though, some of you may be familiar with posthumanism or posthumanists. If you're not, it's really interesting. It's a group of people, most of them atheists actually, that believe that we can conquer death through technology. And part of it includes, how people, get their bodies frozen because they're going to bring them back in the future and cure them, etc. That you can transplant your mind into a computer and be able to live eternally in that computer. Of course, physics tells us there's no such thing as forever. The universe is not going to last forever, and so therefore, at some point, there will be death one way or another. But people, spend a lot of posthumanists spend a lot of time, a lot of money and time in this, and the argument is, look, we already use glasses, we already use embedded, artificial hips, and we use, artificial hearts, and we use all kinds of artificial things that just keeps expanding. Pretty soon, we're going to start using implants on your brain to give you better memory and integrate perhaps AI chips with your own brain, and it's happening. It's already happening. And so the idea is that that perhaps they have faith that we will have eternal life through artificial means. So a bit of a religion in that sense, I guess. But at least it's not. They're not saying, "Hey, my chip is telling me I got to go kill people in the name of the chip," or anything along those lines. Now, Dr. Avalos. So Hector, I refer to him Hector, is someone that you might have not seen. He spoke at a few atheist conferences. The first time, that picture that you see there is the first time I ever laid eyes on him in 2012. I believe there's American Atheists were having their conference in Texas, and I was there speaking, and so was he. And Hector gave a great presentation. He was an expert on the Bible. So kind of odd that an expert on the Bible be an atheist, perhaps a good thing. He started as a fundamentalist Pentecostal child evangelist and faith healer. And it was really his religion that got him interested in, look, I better read, there are all these versions of the Bible, many versions. If I go and study ancient Hebrew, I'm going to get closer to what the actual meaning of the Bible was. And well, he decided to get the best education possible that he could get. His mom, he came from very humble beginnings. Mom was single mother, worked for a family that initially helped him pay for his college when he was getting started. And so he went to learn to read ancient Hebrew and got his BA from University of Arizona, and then went on to get a master's from Harvard Divinity, and then the PhD in Hebrew, Bible, and Near Eastern Studies. So from Harvard University. Not too shabby, you know, from a kid that was born in Mexico. Now, some of you may or may not know Nogales. I've been there a few times, and you have there's Nogales, U.S. in Arizona, and Nogales in the U.S. And so you can go across, and it's a lot of. It's not a pretty place, to say the least. So anyway. We have so this picture you see here was at that conference, and that was the first thing that I picture that I got of him, and I got impressed. Now he was already in my radar, just to fill you in a little bit more. Hector, in 1993, he went to, after his postdoctoral, he went to Iowa State University to teach anthropology and religious studies there, and I'll talk a little bit about the pictures also. So I already had talked to him when I wanted to start Hispanic American Freethinkers. I had read in the newspaper the name of this Hector Avalos, a Spanish name, who was had been making a lot of waves in Iowa State University in 2005. And so I actually called his office and found his name, his phone number in the school directory, and I called him, and he answered the phone. I was kind of surprised because he was in all the newspapers. I thought, this guy is famous. He's not going to want to talk to me. Well, that first time we spoke for about an hour. And I asked him to help me form Hispanic American Freethinkers, which he denied. He said, I'm already with a bunch of other, other groups and other things, but I'll give you some tips on how to start your group. And so he said, don't do a group that is local. Just go for the national, go big, because there are, at the time, 55 million Hispanics in the United States, and there's no one group that is sort of addressing the needs of that community. So anyway, going back to Hector, in 1994, he started a Latina Studies program at Iowa State University, which is still going till today. And in 2005 is when he got into some hot water, because there was another Latino in the religion department that was trying to get intelligent design being taught as a science at Iowa State University. And the university at the time was starting to take the noise that those people were making seriously. And so Hector organized, him and another fellow organized a letter basically saying that they're going to resign if this is the case, because you can't have religion being taught in a science class as if it was true. And very soon he had 130 faculty members signing that letter, and more than that, there were all these other universities that started doing the same thing, signing letters saying, if intelligent design is taught over here, we're going to walk. And they, and of course, keep in mind that this is when the Dover trial was going on in Pennsylvania, and a federal judge appointed, I believe, was by Bush. So a Republican judge was deciding the case, and people were very afraid that that this judge was going to come out and say, yes, this is science and it should be taught. So obviously the Dover trial went in the right direction, and not only that, but the judge was really good at chastising everyone for trying to wedge religion into science. That picture you see in the left, Hector with that handsome woman, is his wife Cynthia, and that's at the Museum of the Bible here in Washington, D.C. I actually encourage all of you to visit the Museum of the Bible. They ask for I believe it's a $10 or $15 donation, but because it's a donation, you don't have to make a donation. You can walk in, they'll probably stop you, but you point to the donation part and they let you in. So Hector and I had the pleasure of touring the Bible Museum with Hector, And of course, because he was an expert, he was pointing out at things in the museum that what they were, etc. And the director of the museum was giving us a guided tour also. Well, just to tell you what kind of person that Hector was, very polite and all of that, he got to an area and he pointed out to the director that some of the artifacts they had did not look real, and he pointed out why these things looked fake, and et cetera, et cetera. And about 3 months later, the museum announced very publicly that they had discovered some items in there that were fake, and that they were removing all those things from their collection. Now, remember, this is Hobby Lobby that pays for that museum, and so they have an agenda. But fortunately, the museum director at the time we asked him point blank, are you here to indoctrinate, or are you here to educate people about the Bible and to put whatever is true? Of course, everything's slanted. They have a lot of people like Jefferson, who was anti-religion, and they have him in there with the Jefferson Bible, you know, a little thing, and they don't explain that the Jefferson Bible was a Bible that Jefferson took everything that was magical, all the miracles and all the nasty things that the Bible has, and ended up with, you know, a very thin booklet that it was called the Jefferson Bible, which was given until the 1970s, I believe, to every member of Congress that came in as a present, and of course the right wing started not liking that. Anyway, so Hector was a prolific writer. Those pictures you see there, that's his home. This is his library at home. And by the way, I'm missing 2 other pictures that show other parts. I just didn't want to fill the screen full of, but this is a man that loved to read and to be educated and self-educated, you know, after he had his PhD. So this library is just the most beautiful thing I've seen. And what you see in the screen, and I'm not going to go through that, are the list of the books that he wrote. And his books were well received by the non-theists as well as the theists. He was fair in what he put in there, and he presented the evidence for anything that he saw in the Bible. I mean, books that were faked. The Bible has a bunch of books that were faked and were put in there, and he can go in. And so people in Iowa State University that took his class, some of them became preachers actually, and some became atheists. And because he was very impartial, he wasn't there to indoctrinate. Now, it doesn't mean that he didn't have debates with an openly atheist, etc. But one of the things that I wanted to point out with his books, is that first book that you see there, Se puede saber si Dios existe, can it be known if God exists? That was the first book that he wrote when he became an atheist. He wrote it more for himself and for his family, who were, you know, he was this child prodigy, and now he's an atheist, and he wanted to explain to his family why he had become an atheist. And then he went on to write all the other books that you see in there. Well, the ironic part is that first book in Spanish turned out to be the last book also that he wrote, or the last book that he had published, because when he got sick and I went to see him at his home, he told me that and gave me a document saying that he was giving us the rights of that book for Hispanic American Freethinkers. And so what we did is I told him what we're going to do with the book is convert it into an audiobook, because a lot of Hispanics that are in this country may not be able to speak Spanish very well, or they don't have the ability because of the kind of jobs that typically they have. And so it's easier to just listen to it while you're doing your work every day. And so he was really excited about it. He had none of his other books are in audio format, and so he was. So we went to do it, and he was very sick already, and so I was trying to get this book out as fast as possible. And this is during the pandemic, so there's a lot of issues that were coming out. But he got to see this book came out in January of this year, so he got to see this book and got to listen to it, and he actually loved the guy that does the voiceover, the actor. He said, he really liked it. His voice was it wasn't preachy, it was easy to listen to, and all of that. And so he was really touched that we were able to do that for him. The day he found out that he had terminal brain cancer, it was in 2019, I had gone to Madison, Wisconsin to do the TV show Freethought Matters at Freedom from Religion Foundation. And as soon as I finished sort of the recording of the show, I got up because another guest was going to be interviewed, and here comes Hector. So I was, oh, hola, ¿cómo estás? And we started, talking. And so after the show, we said, let's go have dinner after the show. And so we went to have dinner, and he was already not feeling well. I could tell his step was slower and all of that. And when in the middle of dinner, his telephone rings, and he goes to the side to answer it. He says, I got to take this call. And it was his doctor telling him that all studies showed that he had brain cancer and that it was kind of advanced. And so he came and sat down, and his wife started crying, because she knew what the call was about. And he said, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'd rather live a good quality of life than just be in chemotherapy. He had cancer before of the bladder, and he had other health issues. And so it was really the only time that I've seen him sad. But he was sad not because he was going to die. He was sad because he had so much. He's like, I still have so much to write about. I'm not done. It's not fair that I can't finish the things that I want to finish. So I decided. So I went to see him after that at his house in Ames, Iowa, and so we spent a lot of time together for a while. And I asked him. I said, look, how about if I record our conversations? And he said, yeah. And so I sat down, put a camera on him, and we talked for hours. I still, he was a good friend of mine, so I still haven't been able to look through the video and see what's in there. But the plan is this year to go through it and, see what's there that we can put out and publish, and let that be sort of his voice from the dead. He had the choice of choosing between quality of life and death and suffering, really. He didn't want to suffer, but that day, you see him in that picture above, is that day that he found out that. And so I asked him, are you afraid of dying? Are you going to? And he's like, no. So long as I don't feel bad, I'm going to continue doing what I do. But I'm not going to be doing chemo. I'm not going to be doing any of that. I've had my share of that, and the doctor says the chance is slim to none. So why make my wife go through that and me go through that? He had a deep trust in modern medicine. He doesn't mean that he didn't get second opinions. On the contrary, it's always good to second opinions, etc. And but it was publishing books, good quality books was what he was all about. Good thing is that a lot of people expressed love for him, including those people that were what I would consider his enemies. People, when he commented on somebody else's book, there's a professor here at GW that just says, I don't like him for what he did to tear my book apart, but I respect him as a scholar, or something to that effect. So they gave him 6 months to live, and he actually lived about a year longer. So with good quality of life. Even the week before he died, he was feeling fine. He was feeling okay. So he only felt really crappy for about 3 days before he passed away. So I hope that we could all be so lucky to live a very fulfilled life. He felt that a life well lived is worth, even if you die young. And I think at age 62, that was a very young age for a lot of people. 62 is we retire in 67 nowadays because we figure there's many years ahead of us still. So Hector, for Hispanic American freethinkers, he showed that we could go from being, you could be humble beginnings, not very educated, etc., but education through, if you keep educating yourself and keep an open mind, learning and learning, especially hone in your critical thinking skills, you could get out of poverty and you could do a lot of things. So he proved that that education could get us out not just of the physical poverty, which is important, but also from the mental poverty that we now see in our entire nation, where an ignorant person has as much voice and has as much to say and is as respected as someone who actually is an expert in the subject matter. As the mug that I saw, my Google search is as good as your PhD. Is what a lot of people feel. So he did demonstrate that you can that critical thinking can get you a better life, and at the end of the day, in every respect. So it's really what we try to do when we visit schools in relation to free thinking and HAFree, with the activities that we do at HAFree. People worry that they're going to be forgotten. Well, the best way not to be forgotten is through ideas, is leaving those ideas. I mean, we have the Greeks and Romans and all these ancient people that we know who they are and remember them because of the ideas that they brought out. So that's what we should strive to do, is to present ideas that become our legacy once we're gone. So in 2018, we gave Hector the Lifetime Achievement Award, honoring his lifetime of scholarship and advocacy for free thought, promoting free thought. So I will always have him. His wife now has the award that he has, and I keep in touch with her. In fact, minutes before we started this, she told me that they're having an event in Ames, Iowa, August the 12th, in honor of him, and so I'll probably be going there in person. But it's really, he was a very humble guy, and probably would not appreciate that this event is going to happen. Right now there are about 180 people that are expected to attend. So anyway, so let's get on with the Death with Dignity a little bit more. Time to get back to a little bit more jokes. I thought this was good. Everybody is always saying, oh yes, the atheists, once they're afraid, they're going to be going into praying for God, etc. So there is this movement, though, Death with Dignity. And what is Death with Dignity? It's a movement that promotes the ability to meet death in your own terms. So Hector got a chance to do that a little bit. There's a lot of people that can't do that. And I'm not even going to mention Dr. Kevorkian, who is someone that I greatly admire for what he was trying to do. But dying with dignity, depending on what state you live in, you cannot offer options for terminally ill people to kill themselves. And a lot of them, want to die and not suffer. I mean, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of suffering. And so really what we're talking about here when we say die with dignity is suicide and euthanasia. Woody Allen, okay, so it's not that I'm afraid to die. It's just that I don't want to be there when it happens. Of course, we have Will Rogers. I thought that was very cute. So it's important that we have these conversations, as I said, so we can lose the fear of it. And I know it took a long time for my wife to talk about this, because she's like, I don't know what happens when you die. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. And you actually, it's best when you do, because you can let your loved ones know more of what your wishes are. Should they pull the plug or not? That kind of stuff. Now, the question in all of this comes up is, well, whose body is it anyway? Who owns your body? Are you your body's owner? The Bible, says, that basically your body is a temple for the Holy Spirit, and therefore it belongs to God. Therefore, the religion tries to tell you what to do with your body. So the religion very clearly claims ownership of your body. We see in a lot of ways how they try to, you're not allowed to sell a kidney, for example. That's why there's a black market for various body parts. And so if you can't sell your kidney, is it really yours? We see with the abortion issue that they try to legislate a woman's uterus. What can she do with her uterus? And she can't scrape it. She can't, do anything with it. And in some places, you risk going to jail, or in some countries, even death. So more than your body, also there's life, right? Who owns your life? And I think we can all agree that life is separate from your body. I mean, you can take an arm off and you can still have life, etc. So who owns your life? And when we supposedly when we go to jail for a crime, is the government taking ownership of your freedom of that body and putting it in a place where that body doesn't have the freedom. And so it's the management or the control of the body that the government does as punishment. But really, you can't do a lot of, like I said, you can't sell your kidney. Part of it, it's because people are not considered, a human body is not considered property. And which is not really true, of course, because if you find the hand of an ancient caveman, that hand belongs to you, and you can sell it to a museum. And so, that's it's all relative, as they say. I'd mentioned before, in the humor, I was trying to find things that were a little cute, that atheists are less afraid of death than religious people. And I mean, studies show that they don't try to linger as much. And so if people believe in heaven, why aren't they eager to get there? It could be because they don't trust that they're doing the right God or something. But religion is pushed on us. When you see these movements against dying with dignity, it's not the atheists in general that are coming with this, it's these religious people, because they figured they can tell you what to do with your own body. And so when we as atheists don't do something about it, when we don't fight it, when we're not vocal, when we don't argue with Uncle Bob because we know that he's weirdo. No, we have to bring this up. And in our own states, if this comes up, we need to be part of that conversation. If otherwise, we just give them a free pass, and laws and things will pass that are detrimental to the freedom. Hector used to tell me that after he announced that he was terminally ill, a lot of people were calling him to say, well, I guess, God showed you, huh? I hope you're ready to accept Jesus in your heart now. That happened because you didn't accept Jesus, etc. And, those people think they're doing you a favor when they're doing that. Obviously, they're not. So the general principle, as I was saying, is that humans are not property, which is why we can't have slavery, because you can't own other humans. And so because you can't own other humans, you can't sell a kidney. You can't sell a kidney, but keep this in mind. So when you donate a kidney, you give the kidney, and the doctor that removes the kidney, he makes a profit because he does the job not for free. The hospital makes a profit. The company that is used to ship that kidney makes a profit. The receiving hospital makes a profit. The person receiving the kidney, man, they get a big bonus. They get a kidney, and everyone makes out profit in the whole thing, except the person that actually owned the kidney. So kind of ironic. Now the problem also is that there are two countries in the world where you can buy and sell a kidney, and the problem is those two countries are Iran and North Korea. So that's the people go, you see, it's those dictatorships. But it's a conversation that needs to be had. the problem, I mean, I think you can do that. You can sell a kidney, just not for cash. There might be, okay, my second generation of kids will have free college or something to that effect. It would encourage people to donate more organs that way. Also, with death with dignity is really the rule is you can be humane to your dog. So if your dog is suffering, you can have your dog killed in a nice way, a horse or any other animal, but not a human animal. That animal must suffer. And religions, a lot of religions teach that suffering is what you should do. Mother Teresa, the bitch, had to, endure. It made people suffer a lot, even though she herself went to the best hospitals money could buy. And her argument was that Jesus suffered, and therefore you're lucky that God sent you this suffering for you to suffer. Of course, it's always a lot easier for watch other people suffering. The problem is that we also look at this as a 100% yes or 100% no. When if there's a problem, like, oh, okay, maybe your relatives are going to kill you for your inheritance. Their inheritance, well, maybe we can organize things in certain ways so that those risks can be minimized. But having someone suffer and linger, especially a loved one in front of you, is, in my opinion, the worst thing that anyone can do to another human being. It is really torture. So I bring questions. I don't bring answers today. Is body autonomy a human right? Do we have a right, a human right, not to suffer if it can be prevented? And do parents own their children? I mean, a lot of nowadays we hear children are not getting vaccinated, and you have this anti-vax movement that is contrary to science. And so the children are controlled by the parents. And can the state, or should the state force them to vaccinate them, knowing that that's the best thing? And so we have, it's always this balance and this war between what freedoms are and what they're not. And you know which side you're looking at, because you will see an article that it says death with dignity, and then you see the other one called assisted suicide. And of course, the assisted suicide is someone typically that is against that. They want to use words that are stronger, suicide instead of dignity, et cetera. And both camps play the word game, similar to the abortion issue. So the question becomes, what's more important is keeping someone alive, knowing that this person is not going to get any better against their own wishes, or not. And it's something that in every state is being argued. There are only a handful of states that allow you to die with dignity and be able to get medicine for you to take your own life, because in most states it's illegal for you to kill yourself. So, last slide, I promise. Don't let religion control the conversation. We need to take a more stronger initiative in the conversation of death with dignity. I think we should try to make humor best we can on this. And education, again, is the key to the whole thing. It's our civic duty to educate others through conversation in our own personal lives, in our communities, and being active in what goes on, because a lot of things are taken away from the school system. And so even if people don't have any children, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to go to the school board meeting just because I don't have any children. The stuff that is there, the people that are going to become your caretakers in the future, they're getting educated now. And so we need to make sure that they have all the information that we have. I mentioned the event on August 13 for the live. They are going to live stream it also, honoring Dr. Avalos. This is what I want to talk about today. I didn't want to make it long and winded. I didn't go through all the little jokes, but trust me, whenever you're feeling bad about the death and the topic, there are some funny things out there.
That's great. Thanks so much, David. Let's get some comments in the chat, and then after we get some of the heavier questions done, we can open up the microphones if people would like that. If you'll stop sharing, we'll go ahead and get to that. Let me make sure my screens are right here. There we go. Okay, great. So it's surprising to me that so many don't realize the main force preventing positive changes are often the forces of conservative and fundamentalist religion. You know, when we volunteer with other groups and when we align ourselves with other groups and collaborate on issues, you know, I think we need to take more of those opportunities to draw that into the conversation, and not go in there with the you know, I'm an atheist shirt on with the point of drilling it into everybody's head, but just say, hey, you know, what is religion doing here in this space? Are you finding that that's changing? I mean, from the womb to the deathbed, religion is preventing progress across so many social issues. Are you finding that that's changing in your area of kind of the greater DC area where there's a little more sanity than some of the rest of the country?
Oh, I don't know. I think that point is debatable on the more sanity part.
In some ways.
No, but your point is very good, and one that I should have made is that there are groups fighting for death with dignity, and it's composed of religious and non-religious people. We want to, and there, anytime that there's anything out there that we have in common with another group, we want to get together on those things and tackle the issues and leave the religious conversation, the atheism, whether God exists or not, etc., for another day. For, you know, you get together and no you know, barbs and things. You know, the idea is you do it. So I found that a lot of the groups that are out there fighting for death with dignity are actually people that believe in God, and that believe that God gave you a gift of life and that you can return that gift of life to God. That suicide is not a sin, and that, you know, that's what the Catholic Church teaches, for example, that if you commit suicide, and yet, you know, you see preachers smoking, and isn't that killing yourself? You know, but we see in the right-wing side always this hypocrisy that, yeah, we want to control others, not necessarily us. And so one of the things that we do in HAFree, we've done a few times, is come in a presentation like this and jointly, you know, work together, jointly do a presentation on death and dying with dignity. So that is something that we've done before, and we're going to continue to do, and it works for not just this topic, but for other things, you know, feeding the hungry, etc., that you can work for some social good causes together with other religious groups.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as we all get older, it becomes more and more of an issue for us, and sometimes it's more planned, but it's never always expected. But I think sometimes we can do more planning for death, you know, financially, socially, whether it's your internet passwords or paying for your funeral and your cremation or whatever. We had a speaker a year ago, Bill Schoolman from the Final Exit Network, which, if you've heard of the Hemlock Society, that's the new and improved name of that organization. And they're working along with Death with Dignity, which is a link that I put into the chat a few minutes ago. So you can keep up with how that's going. And hopefully some of you will be inspired to work on this issue in addition to all the other things that you're working on. But we're going to share that link for you now in the chat. To that video, so that those of you that are watching now on YouTube can go there next. Those of you who can grab that link in the chat and watch, Bill Schoolman talks about a year ago with us right here in this space, how this looks in Florida and what work we need to do. So there's 50 states, there's DC, there's territories, there's a lot of different laws, and sometimes there's good reasons why they're different from state to state, but I find that it's often a challenge. You know, people move from one state to another so they can smoke pot and die with dignity. It's kind of weird that way.
Yeah,
I guess that's what freedom looks like, huh?
Yeah. I see a question from Manesh.
Yeah.
Is this a problem that spans the economic spectrum? Who pays for keeping the uninsured tied to the tubes, et cetera? And yes, in third world countries, the rich, you know, the hospitals can fleece them. Same here. I mean, healthcare is a big business, and for a hospital, keeping you alive on tubes makes them a lot more profit than letting you go. And so perhaps, you know, working with insurance companies, maybe, you know, it hadn't occurred to me that working with insurance companies to push for allowing people to do this. the problem is so the statistic I hear about is that most people spend more than half of their fortune in the last 6 months of their lives, trying to, spend fighting every second for life. The question, it becomes a quality of life, and what kind of, and the question is you having the choice of living that quality of life the way you want to or not. A lot of religions will tell you, well, if you think of killing yourself, you are crazy, and therefore you're not in a good state of mind, and therefore, so it's you can't get out of that one. It's head side win, tails you lose. So that's the how they approach this, and every time that this goes to court in general.
When you believe in exorcism, what won't you believe in, right? It's interesting. So, we're talking with a family today, our family who's at a wedding ceremony in another place here, and they were saying it's a completely secular event. I don't know if you mentioned this. I was following along, I think, pretty well, but I was distracted a little bit with some commenting. Was Hector's funeral, I presume it was completely secular. Did you attend? Did you hear feedback about it? Kind of, have you been to ceremonies that were more secular? I don't want to say atheistic, because that's not really a thing when you're talking about a lack of religion, right? You don't go into a funeral and talk about there's no God. You just don't talk about God. But what was that like if you went, and have you been to other events like that?
So Hector didn't have a funeral. When he died from the hospital, they took his body to the funeral, where within 3 days he was cremated, and the ashes were actually buried already. So the event, and he didn't want anything big. What he did want, he says, a few months after I die, I like to, if you want, told his wife and told me, if you guys want to have something, get together to talk, that'd be great. And so that's what's happening on August 12th. What's interesting is that a lot of people nowadays are becoming, even people that, as people are becoming less religious and more secular, which is also happening in the Hispanic community. They're real, and because of money, they're becoming less religious. I have my wife's aunt died 3 months ago, and her cousin basically paid $3,000 at the church to have a funeral mass, where 6 of us went, and of course I rolled my eyes half the time that I was there, and I thought, what a ripoff! This woman is in pain, and so they take advantage of that weakness. And religion is famous for going for the weak. I see preachers pacing down in the hospitals because people are afraid. So yeah, they get people when they're weakest. Religion gets into children. They're weaker. Their minds are still developing, etc. So what I'm seeing in the Hispanic community, a lot less religion, and until not long ago, the Catholic Church prohibited cremation, which made it very expensive, and so now they accept that as something. This thing that I'm pointing out right here, this is my grandfather, my son's grandfather, my wife's husband, my wife's father, his ashes. Sorry, my son's grandfather, his ashes, and I think that you could, by not doing, by doing a secular thing, is far better. People can then concentrate in the life that this person lived, and they in remembering them in a positive light, then all this magical bullshit of you're going to be in heaven, and once you start peeling that onion and trying, oh well, am I going to be in heaven with the old nose or the nose job that I had afterwards? Am I going to have my wooden leg or the original? You start asking all those, and I don't know. Well, if I'm going to be we're going to be sharing. Am I going to be there with the cousin I don't like? Is he going to be there? Because I don't want to be there in the same place. So it's kind of BS. But the religion took over something where secularism has always had a problem in consoling people when people die, and so that's what we have to develop our own rituals and our own things that bring up Greta Christina has a great book on dying and death and so on that I recommend. It's always good to do this before the death happens, sort of if, my parents are getting their 80s, and so they're very religious. So they're going to have religious things, etc. But I'm going to be fighting, as much as possible not to do the religious part, at least for when the last one goes.
Yeah. When I was at my grandmother's funeral about 10 years ago, the person who led the ceremony was my uncle, and he knows that I'm an atheist. And I'd like to think that my being out and having open conversations with him, hopefully, made that ceremony a little more amenable to my needs in honoring her memory. And I would encourage anyone who's dealing with this to consider people far more informed than David and I on this, but there are people like Greta Christina you mentioned, and Rebecca Hensler, who's going to be talking with us next month from Grief Beyond Belief. Find ways to make that work for everybody involved. There's atheist dogma as much as religious dogma, so we have to remember that there needs to be a space for everybody that's there. I performed a funeral several years ago, and it's one of the hardest things that I've done as a celebrant. And they had to search for a celebrant because the funeral homes don't just have the atheist clergy member ready to go, right? It's not something they do. They can find somebody who will do a secular ceremony, but they're wanting to pay their pastors and chaplains that they know. So there's options out there, and we'll be talking more about this. Certainly, as I get older, I'll be thinking more about it, and hopefully our participants in these events will be more interested in these topics. Someone here pointed out Diane Rehm has a good book on this. Choice, thanks for that suggestion. One thing related to books that I got as a question was, are Hector's books all available in English and Spanish, or are they mixed in some way there?
So all his books were written in English and are in English. The only book he wrote in Spanish is that one that I pointed out, and that's it. The Spanish book was never printed in English, and none of his English books were ever published in Spanish. So yeah, and all his books are available in Amazon. Someone asked, did Hector ever discuss an aha moment when he decided to become an atheist? I asked him that question, and he said no. First of all, not a choice. You can't choose to believe or you can't choose to not believe. It just happens. You either are convinced or not convinced by what you see. And he said that when he first started realizing it's a little bit like taking a chunk of, okay, so this part is kind of fake, but I believe in this other, and oh, this part is not, and you start eating out until one day you discover that there's nothing left. And once he realized that, he was more afraid, like all of us are, that, well, how is our family going to take it? He was the hero of the family because it was this preacher that was very, with a lot of faith and all of that. And so now, what is going to happen? And so that book was served for him, I think, also for a way to verbalize and for himself, as much as it was for his family. So it wasn't quite a single moment. No one ever has ever returned after a month or so. Tell us how it is. Yeah. Yeah, well, and there was, I mean, one of the jokes in there was saying, well, heaven is so good that no one ever comes back from it. So
yeah, I'm going to read Choice's comment because you didn't read it loud enough for me to ensure that everybody fully appreciates it. He's oh gosh, I missed it. Where is it? No one has ever returned from death after a month or so to tell us how it is. It's always only a few seconds, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So yeah. I have one more thing here that was similar to this issue. So mental illness and physical illness are a big challenge. Have you grappled with that? Do you have a well thought out position on it? I mean, I know there's people that have put a lot of thought into how you can define when it's appropriate to have to have aid in dying and when it's not. Have you got anything to say about that, or are you just as concerned with the ambiguity in those two spaces as I am, David?
I think it's I am just as confused because each side of this theme will use their. I tend to err more on the side of the freedom part. that it is your body, and that it is your property, and that if I want to sell you a kidney, I should be able to sell you a kidney. Yes, there are issues and things like that that can all be worked out to be avoided, but the problem is that right now, if you're 20 years old and you want to kill yourself, well, they'll grab you and force you and put you in a mental hospital, because clearly you're 20 years old, you can't kill yourself, etc. And it's a lot of it is cultural, and it's a Western culture kind of thing. In Japan, a country that has a lot of suicides, it's this thing about honor, right? And so perfectly healthy people sometimes have killed themselves because they don't want to be a burden to society, or they don't want to be a burden to their families. And so again, this is the thing where people say, no, we can't allow that. We shouldn't allow that. Should we? And things happen where someone wants to kill themselves, and then they said, yeah, I no longer want to kill myself. I'm glad someone stopped me, and this is good. But when you have something as clearly as, you're not going to get any better, you're hooked up to all these machines, and your suffering is only going to get worse from the horrible torture that you're going through right now, I think those people should be able to say, okay, let me press the button and do it myself. Kevorkian went to jail because one person wanted to do that after many and couldn't do it, and he put his finger on top and helped them, and then became murder. When you help somebody do that.
Yeah, we're really burdened by old ideas, and we're really burdened by all the old people, old like me and older than me and you, who are
old people are in charge.
Yeah, making the decisions based on old ideas and outdated, interests. And we think when we, speak to people who are, and some of us here have mental health issues, right? Not necessarily mental illness, but mental health issues. And we come and go from those spaces, and hopefully we spend more time in a good place than a bad place. But we can't presume that because we can live a life that is free from mental anguish or physical pain, that everyone else can do it too. So I think we've got to keep that in mind. So,
and there'll be people that tell you that if you don't believe in God, there's something wrong with you. You're already mentally ill just with that definition.
Yeah, that's helpful there for sure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, a question came in private chat that I wanted to ask you about, because I haven't seen hardly anybody in the last year. So you're my first Latino that I'm talking to that I can ask this question of. We had Carlos last month, but this wouldn't be appropriate for him. Have you had a conversation? Actually, it would be appropriate. He might have a very different answer. Have you had discussions with Latinos and Latinas about the use of the term Latinx? And
yes.
Is this term gaining traction? And if so, is it younger versus older? Tell me what your thoughts are on this.
Okay, so fair question. I'll start by saying that I'm 57. So not considered young, especially by people in the 20s. So the word Latino actually comes from, it's a Spanish word, so it's not an English word. When we were creating the group, we said, well, we want to be inclusive. How can we be inclusive? Well, the word Hispanic is inclusive. So there's Latino and Hispanic as terms. Hispanic typically means someone from Latin America, that a country where they possibly speak Spanish, although technically it could be Portuguese or French. And Latino typically includes people in Europe and Spain. And so that's been kind of the difference. The term Latino started being used.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
It sounds to me like you have those backwards, and I just want to make sure that I haven't lost myself.
I think
Hispanic
I probably have
is Spanish speaking in general, and Latino is from a Latin American country.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the term Latino started being used more and more in the West Coast, in California, while here in the East Coast, Hispanic was used more often. When this whole thing came out, hey, we need to be more inclusive and all of that. Well, Latino is a male word. In Spanish, all the words are male or female. So if you talk about a table, the table is la mesa, it's feminine, and el carro is the car is masculine. It's kind of weird, but they started to say, well, we got to be inclusive and everything. And then they say, well, we don't want to see Latino, Latina every time. Let's just put Latinx. Well, the Academy of Spanish said no. No new word for Latinx. And so I think that we already have a word called Hispanic that is easier to use. You don't have to be you don't have to claim to be woke to use it, and really talks about the Latinos and Latinas / Hispanics in the US, which nowadays it's about 60 million people. Most people that worry about that, the Latinx, are non-Hispanic. The Hispanics typically don't give a crap about it. Some studies actually have shown that only about 20% of Hispanics actually care about whether somebody says Latinx or not. And that term started just being used in the last few years. It wasn't around 10 years ago. So but that's a good question. I get that a lot.
Yeah, well, you're a resource to us for a lot of things, David.
Thank you.
And I think that, when you said that, it reminded me as a plant and bird kind of enthusiast, wildlife is kind of an interest to me, is, common names are not what the people in the ivory tower came up with, right? It's the common names are all of the names that are really hard. But when it comes to, kind of how we live and breathe and speak culturally, the ivory tower doesn't have a lot to say about it. And honestly, we talked about before we went on the air here, the internet is elevating, the people with the PhD and the people with the Google Foo to the same level. So there may be the word Latinx, whether the ivory tower wants it or not. And I appreciate your feedback on that. And I think the best way to decide what words to use is to ask people what words they want used for them, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the, as I used to say, I don't care what you call me, so long as you call me.
That's right.
So there you go. That's the idea, to be inclusive. It's not necessarily to just try to use those words, but to literally and actually include somebody in the activities and things that are, part of our community.
Indeed. Well, thanks so much, David. It was good to see you again, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon. It's a hell of a way to spend the Lord's Day. So.
Absolutely. And by the way, I want to show you my saint.
Yeah.
Since it's a holiday, she's half Saint Bernard and half poodle.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, 11 months old. So I made sure I walked her a lot right before this, so she wouldn't bug me while jumping on me while I was on camera here.
This went great, David, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad you're doing well, and I hope we see you in the coming months at an upcoming event.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Before everyone else goes, give me a minute to just mention some upcoming events. Next month for our hopefully final online Zoom event, we'll feature Rebecca Hensler, who I mentioned before. She created the nonprofit Grief Beyond Belief. So much grief support out there, as we talked a little bit about here, is religiously based. In 2011, Rebecca formed Grief Beyond Belief, a Facebook page devoted to faith-free grief support. So faith-free grief support. It's grown significantly since then, and she'll talk about that, as well as how we discuss how the secular community is grieving with and without ritual, because some secular people still enjoy rituals, and we may argue about what rituals are. Going to the kitchen every morning and making coffee is a ritual for some people, particularly with so many losses in the last year due to COVID-19. So we thought it would be a good way to kind of finish out our Zoom life and talk about that and honor those that we've lost in some ways as well. So that's August 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern right here on Zoom. We've several social events coming up. We've been in restaurants for the last month or so. They're going pretty well. Hopefully more and more folks will find out about it. We have a secular invocation, which is in place of a religious prayer that's coming up at the Brevard County Commission with our own Keith Betcher on Tuesday. Look for that on Meetup. We have an escape room event coming up in Longwood on Wednesday. You need to RSVP and make sure you register with the escape room for that. Check Meetup for the details. And we start again in Baldwin Park with our Freethought cafes in the evening on Thursday. So there's a lot more than that. That's just the next 4 days. There's so much going on. I encourage you to join us on Meetup at meetup.com/CFL Freethought. And if you need help connecting, just reach out and let us know. The email for the organization is info@cflfreethought.org.